First of all, namaskar to everybody. Meeting after a long time, new semester, and so on. So this is the third semester. 2 semesters, I wouldn't say that we were not going too much into the practicals, but we were in some way. But before you go into practical, you need to have some kind of a idea about what we are dealing with. Now, the subject this time, which we have decided after mutual consultation, is the science of yoga. So my starting point is, when we say science, what is the meaning of the word science? Before we define science of yoga, what do we mean by science? Is science merely to do with physical science, like physics, chemistry, any other material sciences, biology, or is science a word to signify inquiry, to find out something? If you look back into all the great discoveries, even in, can you hear me? You're
Yes,
okay?
sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
Even in what we call physical science. So I want to make this division, physical science and non-physical science, which doesn't mean that non-physical science is not science. So what I want to say is, any great discovery that has been made, even in so-called physical science, has always started with somebody asking a question. There was a time when everybody thought that the Earth was in the middle and all the planets were going around it. Nobody asked a single question. It was accepted. And then came, I think, Galileo, who declared that the Earth is round. It's not flat, like the dosa in our saucepan, but it is round. And that it is moving around the center. The heliocentric system was discovered. Why? Because somebody asked a question. You know the famous story, I believe it's just a story, there's not much truth in it, but it's an interesting story how an apple fell from the top and Newton decided to look into the laws of gravity. I don't know how true this story is. We have seen it when I was in school, we saw the story. Now somebody was saying no apple fell, but it doesn't matter. Something fell. So, and every day something falls. But we don't think about gravity, right? We don't inquire, we don't explore. So even the simplest of things, if one can look into it and try to figure out how and why. In fact, when we were young, there were a series of books called How and Why Wonder Book of Chemistry, How and Why Wonder Book of Physics, and How and Why Wonder Book of Biology. I don't know if they exist today. They are wonderful books. So when we start asking these questions, then it automatically becomes a scientific inquiry. Now, if it has to be a scientific inquiry, one thing has to be certain, that we are not going to say that I believe this, therefore it is right. No. But there is the other side. I don't believe it, therefore it is wrong. Because when you say scientific inquiry, I'm looking at it from the point of view of darsanas. Nyaya philosophy and Tarka, Shastra, they define inquiry as prejudice-less inquiry. If I say that there is nothing here, if I already decided, then there cannot be any inquiry. Even if there is an inquiry, it will end up in my belief. On the other hand, if I say there is and begin inquiring, still it is not a proper inquiry, because then I've already concluded. It's not scientific. So the question is, when you say scientific, it means that for thousands of years, in this case, in yoga, for thousands of years, a whole body of literature has appeared on this science. Well, I'm calling it science. Some people think it's an art. Well, it's also an art in some way, basically it's a science. Thousands of years, from the ancient rishis till now, so many things, so many aphorisms, so many discussions have gone on about this thing called yoga. Now you cannot at once dismiss it saying it's all hogwash, there's nothing like that. So how do we find out? Enquire, try to figure out. So we need to look at the texts which have come to us from ages and then try to understand the science behind the word called yoga. I think this much is clear as an introduction. Right? So now, when I say that certain things might exist which cannot be explained by my senses, what I am trying to say is that if there are ways and means to discover these, then I can prove or disprove if they exist or not. That's what I am trying to say. I say that there is a hypothesis which has come down to us that there are higher powers of the mind, that there are greater faculties in the human being, that there is some entity which religions have called God. Yeah. This, for the moment, unless you know it, it is a hypothesis, either way. Rarely a few, even in those days, had discovered and actually found these things. And those who found wrote down certain things. And they have come down to us. Today they are only belief systems, mostly. Now, even these belief systems can act as a hypothesis. You know, if you want to prove a theorem, like a simple theorem like Pythagoras, it's quite a simple theorem. The square of the base and the square of the, altitude will give you the square of the hypotenuse. So this is Pythagoras. Now, as I say this, it's only a theory. It's a hypothesis. But I need a hypothesis to prove it. Then I geometrically take my instruments and start working on it and say, yes, it is right. So can we also treat all the literature that we have, if you don't believe in it, at least as an hypothesis, suspend our judgment and say, let's look into this. This is what I mean by science of yoga. I'm making clear so that I don't want to talk just mumbo jumbo and leave you there. I wanted to understand. Okay. For thousands of years, not only in this country, of course in this country, because while most other scientists were engaged in physical sciences, many of our great minds were engaged in working and experimenting on the inner sciences. So we have more here than in any other country. Of course, there are the Egyptians, there are the old Mexican civilizations, there are the old Greeks. They all have to have contributed in some way. But as far as India was concerned, there was a time when most great minds spend the time exploring the inner, because the theory was, if you have not explored the inner, whatever is the outer makes no sense. After all, we are living beings. For us, the inner is very important. Physical, yes, we need food when we are hungry and so on and so forth, but internally. So, since ages, we have heard of people who had extraordinary capacities, physical as well as mental. I would go a step further and say even spiritual, without defining the word spiritual for the time being. So there have been reports. There have been reports of people having merged into their deities. There have been stories of people who with great devotion have had visions of the gods that they worship. Now don't jump into the conclusion that it was a hallucination. We'll discuss this matter slowly. And that there are extraordinary capacities in the human system which have not been tapped. We hear these stories. We have read about them. We have read about, for instance, if you read the Ramayana and remove the pictures which have been made about them, you'll realize that seem to be talking about aerial vehicles which seem to be as light as flowers. Well, I can say they were all imaginations and so on, but I'm saying maybe there is some truth behind it. Who knows? Maybe there were great minds who could do such things, lost in the past history which we can't even recall now. And you hear of extraordinary beings who could transfer themselves from one place to another at the snap of a fingertip. Okay, you can come up with this theory when you see such things happening today on the stage, that this is all magic. It can be done through tricks, it can be done through optical illusions. Yes, okay, I agree. Most of the things we see today may not be the real, I agree. But okay, the question is, if someone is imitating something, there must be a real somewhere. If I am imitating that I am floating in the air, which is done in the stage by magicians, which is very easy, it's not a big deal, there must be something before which they were trying to imitate through tricks or through whatever practical processes they could garner. So we are saying, yes, there are such original capacities in the human being. Don't worry, I'm not going to fly away from here. But which now people have lost the way to find this, and therefore we are depending on imitations. Okay, that's one part of the story. The other is there have been cases of extraordinary individuals who are so pure in their minds and hearts and so compassionate, they didn't mind even climbing the cross and being nailed or being persecuted by whoever lived at that time. I'm going to tell you a little story, please. It's not a diversion, to make you understand that there have been extraordinary beings everywhere. There was a Sufi whose name was Ali Mansur al-Halaj. One day, he suddenly discovered through his inner experience that he is in essence the truth. Now, if he was in India, Vedantins, yogis, they would have all accepted this and said, yes, you're right, you are the truth. Aham Brahmasmi, I am the Brahman. But he was born in the wrong place, right? Where God or reality or truth is separate from the ordinary human being. They're not the same. They're separate. There's a deity that you worship and so on and so forth. So the caliph or whoever was the administrator decided to put him to death. But the great thing is, this man, Mansur al-Halaj, till the last minute when he was killed and put to death and tortured, he kept saying the same thing, I am the truth. Because he was in great ecstasy. He had discovered an inner essence of himself, which is the only truth, and he knew this body is going to go any time. So let me stay with my truth. There have been such extraordinary individuals. In India, from the rishis down, if you come to the contemporary times, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, who some people don't know, but they know Swami Vivekananda, who was his chief disciple. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was, if you say in modern terms, an unlettered person. Barely he could sign his name. But through his efforts and through his scientific efforts, I would say, discovered such depths of spiritual experience that the intellectuals of his time used to gather around him to ask questions and find out what is this truth that the Vedas are talking about. What is this truth that the ancients are discussing? Where are we? I'm saying that all this is yoga. So don't for a moment mistake the word yoga for just one kind of yoga. When we start, we have to keep this in mind. We are not talking about only that yoga, which deals with asanas, which also has its relevance. I'm not saying no. That's only one small part of yoga. very small part of yoga. In fact, 4 years ago, this title of my talk in the WHO headquarters in Geneva was titled precisely Yoga Beyond Asanas. Well, asanas are important in one kind of yoga, I agree. But yoga is a vast subject. In fact, yoga is so important as a personal discipline and a personal experimental and scientific approach that without the practice of yoga in some form or the other, every spiritual thing that you say will either be what you learn from somewhere else by rote or which you are saying without your own experience. Here is Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, who is supposed to be academically speaking unlettered, discovered so many wonderful spiritual truths, and people, educated people, used to go and sit at his feet and try to understand what is this man saying, what are his experiences. He said, I have traveled to other worlds. He said, I have this wonderful bliss and ecstasy in me because of which I live and I care for nothing other than that. And so on. And he said, I had face-to-face talks with my deities. So people, there was of course one section, as now, always, which dismissed it is all, I don't want to use the word bullshit, yeah. But there were people who seriously looked into this and tried to find out, and they are the ones like Swami Vivekananda and so on, his disciples, who later on became so famous in the world. So, what I was trying to say is, therefore, when we see imitations, please understand that for an imitation there has to be a real. So we are looking at the real. So we were dwelling on yoga as a word. I said just now, 2 minutes ago, that yoga need not necessarily be only standing on your head or breathing in and out, which is also one part of yoga. I agree. Now, what then can be yoga? Look at the Bhagavad Gita. Now, some people would consider it as a religious scripture. I would consider it as a practical way of living in this world, with your mind rooted in the spirit and your body working in this world, and therefore taking the right decisions. Now, in the Gita, you know that the Bhagavad Gita has 18 chapters. Why did I bring the Gita? I'm just going to tell you. 18 chapters. And in each chapter, every chapter, at the end of every chapter, there is one sentence which is very interesting. It shows what the Gita is about or what this chapter is about. I'm going to say in Sanskrit, but please, if you know Hindi or any other Indian language, you'll probably grasp it before I explain. And this is, it says, Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gitasu. Is that clear for you? Any language? Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gitasu, which means this is the Bhagavad Gita, Iti. Then it says Upanishadsu, which is a study of the Upanishad. So what is the Upanishad? Brahma Vidyayam, the knowledge of the supreme truth, Brahman. Not to be confused with the Brahma who creates the world, please. So, Upanishadsu, Brahma Vidyayam, understanding of the supreme truth called the Brahman, which in Vedantic terms is understanding yourself, because in the ultimate essence, your true self is not different from that supreme Brahman. We will not get into that, I'm just telling you. So, then the next sentence is very important, very interesting. It says, Yoga Shastre. This is the science of yoga. Shastra, science. So, each chapter of the Gita, even though they deal with not just the asanas and pranayama and meditation, which of course one chapter is dedicated to. There is one chapter, the 6th chapter, called Dhyana Yoga in the Gita, which precisely speaks about meditation, pranayama and so on, and how to meditate and all that. So, it is there. However, all the other chapters, starting with the yoga of Arjuna's sorrow, Arjuna Vishada Yoga, Karma Yoga, Sankhya Yoga, and so on, deal with different aspects of life and how to deal with life. These are all called yogas. Every chapter says this is an yoga. Then it says Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade, dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. So it's a samvad. Unfortunately, we can't indulge in dialogue. We'll do that after a while when you have finished this. Okay. So therefore, here yoga means yoga as a science with which you understand yourself, the essence of yourself, and its link with the divine, if there is a divine, and how it can be practiced in daily life so that you do everything to perfection with your mind fully attuned to your eternal substance. This is yoga. From our understanding, from my point of view. Now I think you'll also agree with this point of view somewhere. Right. Now, since you're going to attend this semester, I have a suggestion that there is one text which if possible you buy and go through. Don't practice anything which is given there as a yogic practice, because the author himself says that you can practice this only under guidance, proper guidance. I mean, you end up in trouble because we are dealing with real facts, and some of them are as real and powerful as the electricity which runs on your main lines. Today I'm sitting here with the lights and all your internet and on this, and the microphone is all because of the electricity. But I cannot go and put my finger directly on a high tension wire. I'm finished. So we are dealing with realities with great deal of power and energy. So don't practice anything. But as a good reference book, I suggest that you get, of course I have my book, I don't want to advertise it, called Yoga Also for the Godless. So I won't show it to you because I don't believe in marketing so much. So, but there's another book which you should read. I'm trying to market Swami Vivekananda, not me. Oh, here is a beautiful book. It's a small little book called Raja Yoga, Conquering the Internal Nature by Swami Vivekananda. I think this is a good guideline to keep in view. It can be available anywhere, I think, any bookshop, any small bookshop. It's a collection of series of lectures given by Swami Vivekananda on yoga, on the science of yoga, when he was abroad, in Chicago or somewhere, I don't know where exactly. Now, before we proceed further, therefore, so this is what we are going to deal with in the science of yoga. It's a wide canvas. Of course, at some point we will also discuss the asanas and the pranayama and meditation and so on. But I want to tell you that it's a wider canvas. We're talking about life itself as our true essence of being. This is what we're going to do. And we're going to do a really scientific study. Why? Unless you understand it practically and experience it yourself, it's only a theory. So before we go further, I want to read one or two small excerpts from this book, as you do in all classes, right? I hope so. So, because I don't want to put my words in, I want to have Swami Vivekananda's words. See, with all this yoga, I still need glasses sometimes to read small print. So, which means what? Yogis also wear glasses. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's a good relief for people. I see young people wearing glasses. I started wearing reading glasses only after the age of 65 or 58 or something like that. Now I'm 72. Except for the glasses and grey hair, I don't have any normal phenomenon associated with this age. Right? So anyway, why? Practice of yoga from the age of 10 till today. So what that is, what practices are and all that, we can discuss there. We have a complete semester coming up. So let me read a few interesting verses excerpts from Swami Vivekananda. Now, this is what he starts in the preface. Since the dawn of history, various extraordinary phenomena have been recorded as happening amongst human beings. Witnesses are not wanting in modern times to attest to such facts, even societies living under the full blaze of modern science. However, the vast mass of such evidence is unreliable as coming from ignorant, superstitious or fraudulent persons. In many instances, the so-called miracles are imitations. But who or what are they trying to imitate? Where is the reality? This is what I discussed with you. One excerpt. Here is another thing. Another excerpt. Please listen carefully. For thousands of years, such phenomena have been studied, investigated, and generalized. The whole ground of religious faculties of man has been analyzed, and the practical result is the science of yoga. Swamiji uses the word Raj Yoga here, it doesn't matter, say yoga. Yoga does not, please listen to this very carefully, yoga does not, after the unpardonable manner of some modern scientists, deny the existence of facts which are difficult to explain. On the other hand, it gently and in no uncertain terms tells the superstitious that miracles and answers to prayers and powers of faith, though true as facts, are not rendered comprehensible through the superstitious explanation of attributing them to the agency of a being who is sitting on a cloud. It declares, now here is important to note, yoga, it declares that each man, I say human being, is only a conduit for the infinite ocean of knowledge and power that lies behind mankind. Okay. A few more excerpts. Now, we will at some point deal with Patanjali, who is supposed to be, whose work, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, is a standard textbook for all scientific researchers on yoga. So he tries to compare the Sankhya philosophy. We'll leave that. It is too much for you at the moment. Okay. Second excerpt. In every exact science, there is a basis which is common to all humanity, so that we can at once see the truth or the fallacy of the conclusions drawn therefrom. Now the question is, has religion any such basis? I have to answer both in the positive and negative. Why? Because most people who talk about religion do not have personal experience of it. They just depend on what somebody says. And yoga precisely is that. It's not an excerpt, I'm saying, which takes you directly to the understanding of that experience which you only heard in religious books. One more excerpt. This is very important. Many great human beings or scientists in the spiritual field have experienced and taught about their experiences. But there is a difference. This is an excerpt. Only there is this difference, that by most of these religions, especially in modern times, a peculiar claim is made. What is that peculiar claim? Namely, that these experiences are impossible at the present day. They were only possible with a few men who were the first founders of that religion. At the present time, these experiences have become obsolete, and therefore we have now to take religion on belief. This I entirely deny, not me, Swami Vivekananda. This I entirely deny. The teachers of the science of yoga declared that religion is not only based upon the experience of ancient times, but that no man can be religious until he has the same perceptions himself. Yoga is the science which teaches us how to get these perceptions. Right? So therefore, Swamiji, talking about this little book, says, the science of Raja Yoga proposes to put before humanity a practical and scientifically worked out method of reaching this truth. Each science must have its own methods, and therefore the methods may be different from what you know. Now, in yoga, the instrument is the mind itself. The power of attention, listen carefully, the power of attention, one-pointed attention, when properly guided and directed towards the internal world, analyzes the mind and illumines facts for us. The powers of the mind are like the rays of light dissipated. When they are concentrated, they illumine. This is our means of knowledge. So far, now one more, sorry, I'm boring you with this excerpt. One more excerpt, no? Okay. So far then, we see that in the study of Raja Yoga, no faith or belief is necessary. Why I call it the science of yoga? Believe nothing until you find it for yourself. Swami Vivekananda's quotation. Not mine. Okay? I wouldn't use such strong words, but here he goes. So far then, we see that in the study of yoga, no faith or belief is necessary. Believe nothing until you find out for yourself. That is what it teaches. Truth requires no prop to make it stand. Do you mean to say that the facts of our awakened state require any dreams or imaginings to prove them? Certainly not. This study of yoga takes a long time and constant practice. And a part of this practice is, of course, physical. That's where physical yoga comes into the picture. Now I want to say one or two more little excerpts before we proceed, because we need to be clear where we are going. In the first place, this is a quotation from Swami Vivekananda. In the first place, there is no mystery in what I teach. Nowadays, everybody makes a mystery of everything. In the first place, there is no mystery in what I teach. What little I know, I will tell you. So far as I can reason it out, I will do so. But as to what I do not know, I will simply tell you what the books say. It is wrong to believe blindly. You must exercise your own reason and judgment. You must practice and see whether these things happen or not. Just as you take up any other science, exactly in the same manner, you should take up this science for study. There is neither mystery nor danger in it. So far it is true, it ought to be preached in the public streets in broad daylight. Any attempt to mystify these things is productive of great danger. Last excerpt. No, last but one. The yogi proposes to attain that fine state of perception in which he can perceive all the different mental states. There must be mental perception of all these states. And last, yogi must avoid the two extremes of luxury and austerity. Some people, this might be a revelation to some people, might think yogis are only fellows who wear cowpeens and sit cross-legged and eat nuts and fruits. Chimps also do that. They don't wear cowpeens, of course. A yogi must avoid the two extremes of luxury and austerity, both. He must not fast nor torture his flesh. He who does so, the Gita says, cannot be a yogi. He who starves himself, he who keeps awake, or he who sleeps too much, or works too much, or who does no work at all, none of these can be classified as a yogi according to the Gita. So what does it mean, moderation? Now, I'm going into one aspect of yoga. Now, what you must understand that in ancient times in India, all the different ways of looking at the truth, philosophies of life, were called darshanas. Very interesting word, darshana. Yoga darshana, Sankhya darshana, Vedanta darshana, Nyaya darshana, Mimamsa darshana, darshana. So the word used is darshana, which means the ancients were not happy with us understanding some theories. Ultimately, you need to have face-to-face darshan of the truth. This was the aim throughout, which is why they are all called darshanas. Of them, yoga is one, Sankhya is one. Now, what I am going to tell you is an excerpt, not an excerpt, I am trying to simplify the psychological theory of perception as according to Sankhya and Yoga. Yoga Darshana has borrowed heavily from the Sankhya Darshana. Now you must understand that Sankhya Darshana is one of the oldest philosophies existed in India. If it's ancient in India, then it must be much more ancient as far as the world is concerned. And it was founded by the great Kapila Muni. In fact, Kapila, the great sage, is so important that in the Gita, Krishna declares to Arjuna that among the Munis I am Kapila, which means he's so important. So he is supposed to be the author, the founder of the Sankhya system of philosophy. It will be interesting to note that the word Kapila means blonde. Who knows, maybe some blonde sage, God knows. Kapila, one whose hair is yellow, golden, yellow. Anyway, doesn't matter. Maybe a dark hair, who knows. So the psychological process of perception according to Sankhya and Yoga, they're similar. It's like this. How do I perceive the world? Forget about the ancients now, we are coming to reality. How do I perceive the world? What are the instruments I use to perceive the world? If you thought this science of yoga is merely teaching you some exercises, forget it. We'll come to that in the end, okay? Of course, we'll come to that in the end because there are many practicals, but let's understand this theory first. How do we perceive an object? How do I perceive you? What are the instruments involved? My senses. And how many senses do we have? Put your finger up and show me. 5. I am still to hear somebody with 6 or 10, 5. So we all have 5. So therefore we are equal. Right. We have 5 senses. And you know the 5 senses. The eyes, chakshu. The ear, shrotra. Then gandha, the sense of smell. Then the sense of touch. Any other? Taste. We forgot. Most important. Many people can't stop eating a certain food not because of health but because of taste. I've been accustomed to this, I can't get rid of it, you know. So taste. Somebody might want to get rid of it, but from childhood the taste is stuck, so I can't get rid of it. So what they do now, they make vegan steaks in the West, so that you still enjoy your steak, but it's not animal food. Taste is so important. So sight, hearing, smell, touch and taste. These are the five senses. Now look at the psychological definition of how it works, how perception works. We'll take one instrument now, the eye. The eye sees. Now you know how the eye sees? I think it's very simple. Every eye has a lens, and the image falls on the lens, and you know that the lens is a convex lens. We are born with two convex, one convex lens here, one convex in our chakshu. So light reflects on the object outside, and then it goes into my lens, and then it is registered in my retina, and the optic nerve then takes over, processes it, and says, this is so and so. So this is what happens. The image from the outside is transferred through my convex lens into the retina, which is then registered with optical nerve, and the recognition then begins to take place. This is the process. Okay. Now when the optical nerve takes, what does it do? The optical nerve transforms this image into vibrations. But if the mind is not active in this, I can see any number of images, but they don't register. Suppose I am looking at you all here, but my mind is in the Himalayas. My eyes are open, optical instrument is working, everything is happening, but I don't see you. Why? Because my mind is there. So there is one more component in vision, even in vision, which is the mind, which registers. You can say brain if you like, whatever. But the mind that registers. So the mind is the observer, and it observes the world through the instrument of perception. This is what happens to all instruments of perception. The mind is the ultimate observer. Now the postulate, what the yogi postulates or the Vedanti postulates, is that behind the mind there is the witness which forms the mind, which is the essence of reality, which is conscious. If the mind was not conscious, we will not sense, understand, recognize or do nothing. In a dead body, the eyes are all open. All the images may be still going in if the eyes are open. There is no registration going on there. Registration can happen only when there is a living conscious entity. I can have a very advanced laptop with me. Yeah, the laptop is there. But if I am not there or you are not there, what do we know? What's happening with the laptop? Nothing. Who recognizes what's happening? Me. In the same way, there is a spark of recognition coming from a conscious entity. When that entity is behind the instruments, it recognizes. Otherwise, the instruments can work, but there is no recognition. This entity, the yogis call the Atma, the conscious entity who is witness to all that is happening. Okay. Now, different people may see the same thing in different ways because our minds are colored by our various past memories and prejudices and so on. It's like the media. I give you a news. Somebody died in a car accident. If you look at the headlines in 10 newspapers and 10 news portals, the same news will be reflected in different ways, depending upon who is deciding what to say. The media has become very undependable these days. The real news will be that a black car went and hit a lamp post and somebody died. But in one media, it will be said that that black car belonged to an opposition leader. Another one will say that it belonged to ruling party. Another one will say that there was a lady sitting inside who belonged to a particular religion. Nowadays, you cannot depend on the media. Fact may be the same. You see, 6 newspapers present it in 6 ways, depending upon the management and who runs it, and who decides what is editorial policy. In the same way, when we see something through our senses, we already have the past with us, right? At least till this age, the past experiences. So we don't see anything in its purity. We see it colored by the prejudices and the experiences we have had till now. Yogi says, if you see it in all purity and clarity, with no prejudice whatsoever, you have seen the truth. Otherwise, it's not the truth. It is truth colored by various factors. Now, the science of yoga is how to remove all these colors and look at it as it actually is. When you look at it as it actually is, according to the yogi, you discover that the essence of every living being is the same. It is not different. It is the same. And it is conscious, remember. It is not just material, but it is conscious. Now, this is the science of yoga. How to find that essence in us, which is not recognized by us generally, because from childhood we have been taught that we are so and so, we are limited, we cannot go beyond this, this is only that we can do. Yoga says inside you resides the essence of all the universe. You only go to the essence of your consciousness and you see that you reflect the entire universe. You are very powerful. You are not what you think you are. You have, somebody said it very nicely, when someone asked them if meditation is hypnosis, he said actually it is dehypnosis. Because for years we have been hypnotized into believing that we are these puny little beings who cannot do more than this. That we are born in, so we belong to this, we belong to that. He said, yoga is that which frees one from this conditioning, dehypnotizes one from this imaginary conditioning, unconditioned ones and sets one free and makes one understand that we are part of that infinite universe. And therefore we have much more capacities than we can even dream of. So therefore the first step in yoga is don't let anybody demoralize you and say this is not possible. The possibilities are infinite. But then, like everything else, you should start with the hypothesis that it is possible. If you start with a hypothesis that it is not possible, nobody can help. Why? Because the mind is so powerful. And it is the mind that makes you, and it is the mind that makes the world. And especially in youth, the world is in your hands. The future. We might have messed up. Who knows? But please don't mess up in future. You have this wide world. Everybody is a spark of the divine. Just keep this in mind. This is yoga. Every living being is a spark of the divine. There is no one outside the ken of this. So if anybody is right or wrong, ultimately you understand that you are pure consciousness. This is the science of yoga and how to go towards that. We will also have practical sessions on how to tap your mind, how to expand your consciousness, and various other aspects of yoga. So with this, I will stop my session for today. So we have some time for questions and answers. Let me remind you that sometimes the questions you ask today may be answered in tomorrow's talk. I don't know. And if you have questions, please ask me. And if I know the answers, then I will tell you. And if I don't know the answers, I'll tell you I don't know. Let's be very factual and truthful about this, right? Okay, thank you.
Good evening, sir. Sir, if we consider yoga as a science, then is it a complete science? That is, everything is already, all the theorems are already proved, and I as a person does not have access to it, or I have to experience it, or is it like physics, where we know that certain things are not proved yet, but we just don't know?
Yes, you're right. This is a good question. Yes, I think that partly most of the things have been experimented and found out, and that we need to perform the experiments necessary to get the results which have already been done. Yes. But like any other science, it has no end to it. See, in physics we have now gone up to quantum, right? Quantum physics, and we are there. So when we reach, how did we reach quantum? By studying the experiences of other scientists and their experiments and how they reach there. But it will be entirely unscientific to say that this is the end. There may be something beyond, which we don't know. So I personally feel that as the human being evolves and his consciousness evolves, there may be still hidden depths in yoga to be discovered, which we don't know now. Quite possible. But to do that, we should go at least to where we have gone till now. Otherwise, we don't have the instruments to go beyond. I hope you get what I'm trying to say. See, look, the interesting thing is, in most things there is, I have understood and it is over. In this science, it is never over. And that's what makes it more exciting. You come across newer dimensions. We don't know if others have discovered it before. We don't know. But we come about new dimensions which are extraordinary.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you said that this magic tricks or whatever, so it could be imitation of reality, but could not it be just imagination? Like, has everything has to have an imitation of reality? It could be just an imagination, right?
Maybe. But how do we know unless we go into it and inquire and check? Maybe you're right. Maybe there is nothing, that it is not an imagination. I mean, it's just an imagination and people are imitating, quite possible. But I am saying, unless we go into it and check for ourselves, we cannot dismiss it off as mere imagination. Why? Because for thousands of years, some people have been talking about it. It can't be, at least you should give it benefit of doubt and say, okay, perhaps let me figure out. The problem here lies, where? Because this science which we call yoga, I'm talking in general terms about yoga, not just asanas, health yoga. No, that's one part of it. The difficulty is you need a great deal of dedication and one-pointed effort to get to the result here. This is one problem. So therefore many people give up in the middle. They start, then they say, hey, this is too difficult for me. कोई बना बनाया चीज नहीं है. I mean, you need, so therefore it goes off in the middle because it needs a life of, see, I'll give you an example. Since you're an IIT person, you know that how hard a great scientist might have worked to discover something. Yes. Now when it comes to spiritual or to yoga, people expect everything to be given on a platter, ready-made. Unfortunately, there are many people who cater to this. Therefore, the inquiry has become dulled. It's a package, like you pay this much, you get, this is your yoga, go. So then, what happens? The mind loses its capacity to learn. So, and especially because this is a new track, it's not the weather-beaten track, right? In all other scientific inquiry, you go outside. This is a process where you're going inside. It's a reverse process. Vedanta calls it the Nivritti Marga, going back, turning back. It's not easy. It requires a lot of discipline, practice. So generally people, I mean, human nature being a little lazy, would like to dismiss it as, this is not, who wants to get into. But if you go into it and if you are ready to dedicate yourself to work on it, I'm sure at some point you will begin to discover something. Up to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
you. Namaskar, Guruji.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a question about the state. About the state that people achieve after following these different methods. So though they follow different methods, they experience a similar state of mind or maybe consciousness. So I was like confused why they experience similar state after following these methods.
Why? Meaning
Why
what?
they experience similar state of like mind or experience the same.
Even though they follow different ways.
Yeah.
Because the ultimate essence is the same. You may approach it through different ways, different means. One thing is sure, it has to be one-pointed approach and there are no compromises. So if you approach, then this thing is so vast that there cannot be only one single way to approach it. See, suppose it's one thing here, physically. This is my approach to it. This is my approach to it. What if it is all pervading and vast? There cannot be one single way to touch that. There might be different ways of finding it. But when found, it is the same. This is why the Rigveda declared 2000 years ago, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vedanti. That means there is only one truth. The wise may approach it through different ways. The reason why there are different ways is because we are all made differently in some way, even the common point is that we are consciousness. But our background, our being brought up, where we live, it all has an impact on our mind, right? So we are different also. So this unity in diversity is the most important experience as far as the spiritual goes.
Yeah, my question was like, why there should be a one truth? Why cannot be like certain different truths like we follow and like by following different methods we reach there, and we by getting there we know like there are like 2 to 3 like for example truths there are like there.
Yes. But the experimenters in this particular field who have experienced 2,000 years of experiment have concluded through their understanding that whichever way we go, there is only one truth. That is why. So we are free to experiment. If we find out that there are many truths in the end, then it's up to us to deny this. Till now, no one has done that. When you reach there, if you find there are 3 truths, okay, we agree. But from our understanding, whatever way we follow, you reach the same truth. This is our experience till now. Maybe this is a path-breaking discovery. I don't know. But one should be prepared to work on it, right? Find out the experiments, how to go about it. And then if you find there are many truths, then I will follow what you said and see if there are. No problem. Yeah, this is quite a novel thought, of course. Anyway, you also set me thinking just now. Okay.
Can we take a few more questions?
Yes, sir. By all means. I'm yours.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, sir.
Sir, you earlier mentioned that yoga is a process of freeing oneself from the prejudices. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yoga is a means of freeing oneself from prejudices. And you earlier also quoted someone saying that yoga is a process of de-hypnotizing or clearing up the clutter. Right. So, sir, and on similar lines, you also said that yoga as a science, just like any other science, it is also infinite. So
it is what? It's what?
Infinite.
I didn't say infinite. I only said that yoga is a way to discover the infinite. Okay. And there may be many methods. That's what I meant.
Okay. But the ultimate aim or the ultimate aim of the science is to uncover what is the inner essence, right?
Reality, yes.
Okay. Sir, so my question is, like, while you were responding to the previous question, you said that there is only one truth. Sir, can you explain me what is that truth? Like, is truth something different from facts?
Yeah. Now, the difference between what we all normally consider to be facts and therefore true, and what I mean by the word in brackets, truth. Let's look at this first, yes. Now you see it's like this. When we say fact, these things which we consider to be facts are dependent upon our experiences through our 5 senses, right? Right. So, if the sensory organs or the instruments of perception are different, then what we say facts, what you say fact may be different from what I call the fact, although what is there may be the same. Let me explain this to you. Suppose I have eyes which have convex lenses, right? Like you. What happens if my eyes, the instrument of perception called the eye, it has a different set of lenses from birth, not now. I give you an example. There are creatures like that. The fly, the common house fly, has what is known biologically as a compound eye. That means it has many small lenses put together. What will be its vision of it looking at me or you? It may not be the same as I and you looking at each other. Why? Because our instruments of perception have a certain kind of equipment, lens, etc. While the housefly has a different set of instruments to perceive. Right. So If I look at this and say that this is round, fact for me. Now the fly with a compound eye may see this not as a round but as something else. We don't know how it will define in its language, but it will see something else, normal, right? Right. So what is the fact? That this is round, or is it what the fly thinks it is? We don't know. I can only say that according to me this is a fact. This is the physical facts. This is what I mean by facts. They are right, but they are related to my perception also. But when we say truth in the ultimate sense, it means that which is same to whatever be the perception. It can't change because the instruments of perceptions have changed. It is that which is changeless, eternal and ever existing is what is defined by yoga and the Upanishads as the truth. While these are facts, this can also be temporary facts which can change. That we are talking about something eternal, that which does not change. That is the difference between the word truth there and the word truth here in relation to fact. Now, that truth also you can call a fact, but it is the ultimate fact. Why? Because now we don't know about it. But because we don't know about it, it does not mean that it does not exist.
So, what is the truth, sir? And all I know is facts, right? So,
I want to tell you something very interesting, okay? According to the teachings of the great yogis and Vedantins, truth cannot actually be defined by any word. And you are asking me to do the impossible. When all things which are not true are eliminated, what remains is the truth. Now, and any attempt to put the truth into words have always ended in utter failure. Although there is no other way, because the only communication we have is language, right? Now I have to tell you two things. One is a story with which we'll end this session, because but this is interesting. Two things. One is not a story. Last I will give you a story to sustain your interest for tomorrow. Vedanta says that when you eliminate everything, that's why the word that Adi Shankara, the greatest exponent of Advaita Vedanta, uses is called Neti. That means not this. Neti means not this. So, according to the Vedantin, when you face something and you are looking for the ultimate truth, which has to be always there, eternal, as opposed to that which is not true, which can change, the changeless eternal truth, then if you see something and say this can change, therefore it is not the eternal truth, therefore you say Neti, not this. Then you go on saying Neti, not this, not this, not this, not this, until you in an end you will come to a place where you cannot eliminate any more. You stop. And when you stop, what is the truth. I mean, this is the Vedantic concept. The Upanishad also says, Yan manasa namanyute gyanahur manomatam, that which even the mind cannot understand, that is the absolute truth. Or Yat vachana abhyutitam, that which words cannot explain, this is the ultimate truth. Tadeva brahmatvam vidvi, understand that alone is the supreme truth, says the Upanishad. So this food for thought for tomorrow. I'll tell you a story. So you must have heard or not heard about J. Krishnamurti, one of the great philosophers and teachers in recent times. So I was at one of his talks in Chennai, which was the headquarters of the Krishnamurti Foundation. And he used to sit under a tree and talk for 1 hour. So the talk was going on. The subject that day was meditation. I am saying this because you asked me to define the truth. First I said Vedantically truth cannot be defined. When all definitions stop, then there is the truth. But now I'm telling you a story, real story. And I'm also sitting there. This man is sitting under the tree and the subject that day is meditation. And he went about doing the same process that Shankara did, neti, neti, not this, by saying, this is what you think is meditation. No, this is not meditation. And so on. In fact, he ended by saying, whenever there's an effort to meditate, you're not meditating. So it went on like that, and it became evening time, and it was a beautiful evening. I still remember there were some crows flying across, and everything was silent because all the ideas we had about meditation have been destroyed. There's nothing to hang on to, and everybody is sitting quietly, happily in good meditation. Let me put it this way. Because there's nothing to hang on to, free. That's the time when one man stood up in the front row and said, sir, then what is meditation? Here is a man who is trying to tell you, if I say anything about meditation, the meditation ceases to exist. And here is a man who, after hearing the whole thing, when you are quietly in meditation, asking the question, sir, then what is meditation? It's similar to the question that what is the truth, sir? So, I'm just trying to give you an example. And believe me, it's freedom. So we will now meet tomorrow, same time.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. Nice set of questions too. See you.